Dragons in Middle-earth are among the most terrifying and powerful creatures ever unleashed upon the world. Created by the Dark Lord Morgoth, they embody the destructive power, cunning intelligence, and insatiable greed that the forces of darkness sought to wield. Their fiery breath and near impenetrable scales make them almost unstoppable, while their malice and intelligence add an insidious edge to their threat. Yet, despite their monstrous nature, each dragon has its own role and fate within the histories of Middle-earth, from the legendary battles of the First Age to the quiet dread of the Third Age. Although Smaug, the dragon of The Hobbit, is perhaps the best known among modern audiences, he is only the latest in a lineage of dread and devastation. Smaug's predecessors had already laid the foundations of dragonkind's reputation, carving their legacy in the blood of elves, men, and dwarves across the ages. The first and most infamous dragon, Glaurung, unleashed terror upon Middle-earth in the First Age, setting a dark precedent for those who followed. Dragons like him, bred by Morgoth, would rise to shatter armies, raise entire kingdoms, and spread fear across vast lands. In today's exploration, we will journey through the ages to uncover the history of dragons in Middle-earth, tracing the arc from Glaurung, the father of dragons, to Ancalagon the Black, the mightiest of them all. We'll also examine the legacy of Morgoth's brood, who, even after their creator's fall, continued to haunt Middle-earth's free peoples. Each dragon, from the cunning Glaurung to the monstrous Smaug, has played a unique role in Tolkien's world, and their stories reveal a broader tapestry of battles, curses, and tragedies shaped by the ambition and malice of their dark creator. Glaurung, the father of dragons. Glaurung, the first dragon to be unleashed upon Middle-earth, earned his title as the Father of Dragons by bringing a level of devastation never before seen by the elves and men of the First Age. Created by Morgoth himself, Glaurung was a terrifying manifestation of raw strength and cunning. Unlike later dragons who would possess wings and the power of flight, Glaurung was a massive earthbound creature, armored with impenetrable scales and endowed with a fiery breath capable of decimating armies. One of Glaurung's most dangerous qualities, however, was not his physical strength, but his sinister intelligence and power over minds. Glaurung was capable of psychological manipulation, and he used this skill to inflict suffering and despair upon his enemies. His encounters with the tragic figure Turin Turambar highlight this power, as Glaurung's curses haunt and destroy Turin's family. In their twisted interactions, Glaurung proves that he is as much a creature of dark sorcery as he is of brute force. He does not merely wish to kill, but to corrupt and demoralize, turning his victims' own minds against them. This tactic makes Glaurung a truly formidable foe, who represents a new kind of psychological warfare in Middle-earth. Glaurung's role in the history of Middle-earth extended far beyond mere destruction. His actions shaped the fates of some of the noblest families among both men and elves, impacting not only Turin, but also Beleg and Morwen. By entwining himself in the lives of these tragic figures, Glaurung became emblematic of the doom that Morgoth spread throughout Middle-earth. His influence and cruelty would serve as a template for future dragons, leaving a legacy of fear and manipulation that future generations could not escape. Ancalagon the Black, the mightiest of the dragons. Ancalagon the Black, a dragon whose mere name inspired dread, was the mightiest and largest of Morgoth's dragons, and the first of the fearsome, winged dragons. Unlike Glaurung, Ancalagon was a true creature of the skies, and his wings allowed him to spread destruction over vast distances. As Morgoth's most powerful weapon, he was released during the War of Wrath, the cataclysmic final battle between the forces of Morgoth and the Valar at the end of the First Age. Ancalagon's arrival on the battlefield was like a storm in itself, as he led a host of winged dragons that darkened the skies, raining fire upon the armies of the Valar and their allies. His appearance marked the pinnacle of Morgoth's might, and for a time, it seemed as if he would turn the tide of the war in Morgoth's favor. However, Even Anchalagon's unmatched power was not enough to overcome the full strength of the Valar. In one of the most legendary feats in the history of Middle-earth, the mighty warrior Eärendil, aided by the eagles led by Thorondor, took to the skies and engaged Anchalagon in a battle that culminated in Anchalagon's fall. The Black Dragon's death was as dramatic as his life. As he plummeted from the sky, his massive form crushing the peaks of Thangorodrim, Morgoth's mountain stronghold, upon impact. The death of Anchalagon and the destruction of Thangorodrim symbolized the end of Morgoth's power in Middle-earth and signaled the beginning of a new era. Although his life was relatively short-lived in comparison to other dragons, Anchalagon's presence in the War of Wrath was monumental. His death proved that even the most powerful weapons of darkness could not withstand the united strength of the free peoples of Middle-earth and the forces of the Valar. Anchalagon's legacy, however, would live on, as his might and terror became legendary, and he would be remembered as the greatest of all dragons to ever live. Smaug, the last great dragon. The Third Age saw the rise of a different kind of dragon. Smaug, a creature of unparalleled greed and cunning, who terrorized the dwarves and men of the north. Unlike his predecessors, Smaug was not a product of Morgoth's immediate influence, as Morgoth had long been vanquished by the time of Smaug's birth. Yet, he embodied the same traits of malice, pride, and greed that characterized Morgoth's dragons. Smaug made his home in the lonely mountain, Erebor, where he had driven out the dwarven kingdom under the mountain and claimed its vast treasures for himself. Smaug's influence extended beyond mere terror. He disrupted the economic and social structures of the entire region. With the wealth of Erebor under his control, the prosperity of neighboring realms like Dale crumbled, leaving a shadow of desolation in his wake. The people of Lake Town, though some distance away, also lived in constant fear of his wrath. Smaug was an embodiment of greed's devastating consequences, hoarding his treasure not out of necessity, but out of sheer arrogance and a sense of possession. Smaug's eventual defeat by Bard the Bowman of Lake Town is a testament to the resilience and courage of ordinary people in Middle-earth. Though Smaug had previously seemed invincible, his death revealed that even the most powerful of creatures have weaknesses. His fall marked the end of the great dragons in Middle-earth and brought about a new period of hope for the people of the North. Smaug's legacy, however, endured in the tales and songs of the land, a reminder of the time when a single dragon held entire nations in fear. Legacy of Morgoth's brood. Though the individual dragons were slain, the legacy of Morgoth's brood left a dark shadow across Middle-earth that lasted far beyond their physical presence. Dragons were the ultimate expressions of Morgoth's influence over the natural world, creatures who combined physical might with a malevolent intelligence that matched the most cunning of elves and men. Even in death, the terror they inspired did not fade. Tales of their deeds lingered, reminding future generations of the doom that could arise from unchecked power and greed. Dragons were more than simple monsters. They were agents of corruption who left lasting scars on those they encountered. From the tragic fate of Turin to the economic ruin of Dale, their impact extended beyond physical devastation to psychological and spiritual corruption. The dragons' malevolence, combined with their insatiable hunger for wealth and power, reflected Morgoth's desire to dominate all life in Middle-earth. They also embodied Morgoth's philosophy of using the natural world as a means of spreading corruption, making them not just enemies of flesh and blood, but symbols of a deeper, more insidious evil. In the Third Age, the shadow of dragons remained in the warnings and fears that old stories passed down, influencing the lives and choices of later generations. Though Smaug was slain and the great dragons were gone, the legacy of Morgoth's brood was an ever-present reminder that Middle-earth had faced dark powers that could one day rise again. This legacy serves as both a warning and a lesson for those who inherit Middle-earth, illustrating the dangers of greed, pride, and malice, and the importance of unity and courage in the face of overwhelming darkness. By understanding the history of Morgoth's dragons, the free peoples of Middle-earth could gain insight into the ongoing struggle against the remnants of darkness that still lingered in their world. Even as new threats emerged, the memory of the dragons and the heroes who fought against them provided a foundation of courage and resilience, reminding all who heard these tales that no matter how powerful or terrifying an enemy may be, it can be defeated with strength, wisdom, and unity. Each of these chapters emphasizes not only the dragons' physical presence, but their lasting impact on the lives and psyche of Middle-earth's people, highlighting how Morgoth's influence continued to affect the world even through the dragons he left behind. Through Glaurung, Ankalagan, and Smaug, we see the evolution of Morgoth's malevolence and the ways in which his creations instilled fear, altered destinies, and shaped the course of Middle-earth's history. The nature of dragon greed. The concept of greed is central to understanding the nature of dragons in Tolkien's Middle-earth. Unlike mere animals driven by hunger or survival, dragons are deeply motivated by an insatiable desire for wealth. This trait, particularly prominent in the dragons of the First and Third Ages, serves as a reflection of Morgoth's corruption. Morgoth instilled in his creations an unnatural obsession with gold, jewels, and treasures, making dragons embodiments of greed's most destructive aspects. This greed is more than a simple desire to possess. It transforms into a possessive jealousy that prevents dragons from allowing others even the slightest benefit from their hoards. For instance, Smaug's occupation of Erebor was not merely about gaining wealth, but about the sheer delight of controlling something that others desired. He hoarded the treasure of the dwarves not for sustenance or utility, but for the pleasure of denying others and the satisfaction of absolute ownership. Smaug's covetous nature led to the downfall of Dale and the impoverishment of the surrounding region, illustrating how dragon greed affects entire communities and ecosystems. In a deeper sense, dragon greed mirrors the broader theme of corruption in Middle-earth, which often arises from a desire to possess or dominate. Morgoth, who created the dragons, was himself driven by a desire to control all things and to make the beauty of the world his own. Dragons, therefore, are not only physical embodiments of greed, but also of the twisted desires that Morgoth injected into the very fabric of Middle-earth. Their greed symbolizes how unchecked desire can consume and destroy, leaving nothing but devastation in its wake. Dragon speech and power of persuasion. Dragons in Middle-earth possess not only physical power but also a formidable intellect and a dangerous ability to manipulate those they encounter. This ability, especially evident in Glaurung and Smaug, is one of their most dangerous attributes, as they can ensnare the minds of others, bending them to their will or driving them to despair. Dragon speech, therefore, is as much a weapon as their fire or claws, allowing them to inflict psychological wounds that are often more devastating than physical injuries. Glaurung, the father of dragons, was a master of mental manipulation, using his voice and gaze to psychologically torment his victims. In his encounters with Turin and Nienor, Glaurung used his words to twist their perceptions and sow seeds of despair and hopelessness. By manipulating Turin into making fatal choices, Glaurung ensured that his legacy of harm would continue long after their encounter. In a similar way, Glaurung's cruel deception of Nienor left her vulnerable and ultimately led to the tragic demise of her and her brother. Glaurung's speech was a direct extension of his power, emphasizing that his true strength lay not only in his physical might, but in his ability to instill fear and self-doubt. Smaug, too, demonstrates a silver tongue, one that he uses to subtly probe Bilbo's motives and exploit any weaknesses he senses. When Bilbo enters Smaug's lair in Erebor, the dragon's smooth and calculating speech serves as a trap. By casting doubts and slyly questioning Bilbo's intentions, Smaug attempts to draw information out of the hobbit while maintaining a facade of politeness. Smaug's words are laced with malice and vanity, revealing his ego and desire to instill fear. In this scene, Smaug's speech shows that dragons do not rely solely on brute force. They understand the power of language and can wield it with precision, creating terror in the hearts of their opponents. Through the dragon's ability to manipulate with words, Tolkien explores the theme of corruption through persuasion. The dragon's speech reveals how those who are weak-willed or unprepared for such cunning can be led astray, manipulated into actions they would not otherwise take. This psychological power, in some ways, is more dangerous than their physical strength, as it leaves a lasting impact on their victims. The use of speech as a weapon also underscores the sophistication of Tolkien's dragons, making them not just beasts of destruction, but entities capable of complex and calculated malevolence. The legacy of dragons in Middle-earth. Though dragons like Glaurung, Ankalagan, and Smaug met their ends, the legacy they left behind continued to shape the history and culture of Middle-earth for ages to come. The stories of dragons became woven into the collective consciousness of the free peoples, serving as cautionary tales about the dangers of greed, pride, and unchecked ambition. The impact of dragons extended beyond their physical existence, influencing events, attitudes, and even the political landscape of Middle-earth. The fall of Smaug, for example, had far-reaching consequences for the North. The reclaiming of Erebor and the re-establishment of Dale brought renewed prosperity to the region, which had suffered under Smaug's shadow for years. With Smaug gone, trade and alliances between the dwarves, men, and elves of the North began to flourish once more. The shared experience of facing a common enemy helped forge stronger ties among these communities, creating a legacy of cooperation that would later aid in the struggles against Sauron in the War of the Ring. Dragons also left an indelible mark on the lore and culture of Middle-earth. Stories of Glaurung's devastation, Ankalagan's fall, and Smaug's greed were passed down through generations, becoming part of the folklore that warned against the temptations of power and the dangers of hoarding wealth. The tales of Turin's tragic encounters with Glaurung and the catastrophic War of Wrath shaped the elves' understanding of Morgoth's evil, while the men of Dale and the dwarves of Erebor held fresh memories of Smaug's tyranny. Furthermore, the defeat of the dragons left a psychological legacy, as the people of Middle-earth were reminded that even the greatest of foes could be overcome. This sense of resilience and hope was important, especially as the shadow of Sauron began to rise once again in the Third Age. Though Sauron was a different kind of evil than the dragons, the free peoples could draw strength from the knowledge that they had previously vanquished creatures as fearsome as Smaug and Ankalagan. The legacy of dragons thus provided both a warning and an inspiration, a reminder that courage, unity, and vigilance could overcome even the darkest threats. In a broader sense, the dragon's legacy highlights the cyclical nature of evil in Middle-earth. Although Morgoth was defeated and his dragons slain, the shadow he cast continued to linger. Sauron's rise was a continuation of Morgoth's influence, and the remnants of dragonkind served as symbols of that persistent threat. They embodied the theme that evil can never be completely eradicated, but must be constantly fought against. The tales of dragons reminded the people of Middle-earth that the fight against darkness is an ongoing struggle, requiring both strength and wisdom. The legacy of dragons, therefore, is both dark and hopeful. They represented the most terrifying aspects of Morgoth's power and left scars on the lands and people they tormented. Yet their defeat also showed that even the greatest evils can be overcome. By confronting the dragons and the legacy of terror they left behind, the free peoples of Middle-earth gained strength, wisdom, and unity, which would ultimately help them stand against future threats. In this way, the legacy of dragons became a foundational element of Middle-earth's history, a reminder of both the costs of greed and pride and the enduring power of courage and resilience. Through these chapters, the book highlights the profound impact of dragons on Middle-earth's history, culture, and peoples. Each chapter delves into different aspects of the dragon mythos, portraying these creatures as embodiments of Morgoth's dark influence and as powerful symbols in the ongoing struggle against evil. Together, these chapters explore how Tolkien's dragons, though defeated, left an enduring legacy that shaped the world long after their physical presence had faded. Dragons and warfare. The dragons of Middle-earth were not just powerful creatures, but also strategic weapons used by Morgoth in his wars against the Free Peoples. Dragons were, in many ways, his ultimate weapons, combining brute force with cunning intelligence, fire, and flight. Their introduction into warfare transformed the nature of battle in the First Age, forcing elves, men, and dwarves to adopt new strategies and defenses against this terrifying new threat. Dragons became symbols of Morgoth's might, a manifestation of his ruthless ambition to dominate and destroy. Glaurung, the first dragon, was an innovation in Morgoth's military arsenal. As the father of dragons, he was sent to devastate the elves and their allies during the wars of the First Age. His presence on the battlefield was catastrophic, as he could both inspire fear and inflict massive casualties. Glaurung's strength lay not only in his physical might, but also in his power to manipulate and confuse. He demonstrated how dragons could be used to demoralize armies, breaking their will to fight before battle even began. His ability to psychologically manipulate individuals, like Turin and Nienor, underscored the dragon's capacity to wage a psychological form of warfare that went beyond traditional combat. The arrival of Ankalagan the Black during the War of Wrath marked the pinnacle of Morgoth's power. Ankalagan and the other winged dragons introduced a new element to warfare: aerial attacks. When the winged dragons emerged, they unleashed devastation on the armies of the Valar, forcing them to regroup and re-evaluate their tactics. Ankalagan's sheer size and strength represented Morgoth's final, desperate attempt to turn the tide of the war. His impact on the battlefield was so immense that his death led to the reshaping of the lands around Thangorodrim, symbolizing the cataclysmic power dragons could bring to a conflict. In response to the threat of dragons, the Free Peoples developed innovative tactics and weapons. The alliance of elves, men, and dwarves in the First Age led to the forging of weapons specifically designed to counter the dragon's strengths, such as armor resistant to fire. The dwarves, in particular, were known for their skill in crafting armor and fortifications that could withstand dragon fire, demonstrating their adaptability and resilience. The battles with dragons pushed the Free Peoples to unite and to develop more sophisticated means of defense, setting the stage for future alliances against Sauron. The use of dragons in warfare underscores the theme of escalation in Tolkien's works, as each age of Middle-earth sees the forces of darkness develop more powerful weapons to assert their dominance. The dragon's role in warfare illustrates the lengths to which Morgoth would go to secure power, and the extreme measures the Free Peoples needed to counteract such force. Through the dragons, Tolkien explores the concept of total war, where every available resource and weapon is employed to achieve victory, regardless of the cost. Resistance against the dragons. Despite the terror that dragons inspired, the Free Peoples of Middle-earth displayed remarkable courage and resilience in their fight against these monstrous creatures. The stories of heroes who faced dragons, often with little hope of success, serve as testaments to the bravery and tenacity of Middle-earth's inhabitants. By confronting dragons, these heroes not only defended their lands, but also symbolically resisted the darkness and despair that Morgoth sought to spread. The battle against dragons, therefore, became a moral as well as a physical struggle, with victory representing a triumph of hope over fear. One of the most famous examples of resistance against dragons is Turin Turambar's encounter with Glaurung. Despite Glaurung's manipulative power and overwhelming physical strength, Turin confronts the dragon head-on, driven by a desire to protect those he loves and redeem himself. Turin's willingness to face Glaurung, despite the overwhelming odds, illustrates the resilience of the human spirit, even when faced with forces beyond comprehension. Turin's victory over Glaurung, though ultimately tragic, remains a powerful example of resistance, showing that even the mightiest of foes can be challenged by sheer determination and courage. Another iconic example is Bard the Bowman's slaying of Smaug during the attack on Lake Town. Bard, a descendant of the ancient kings of Dale, becomes a symbol of hope for his people in a time of despair. Armed with a single black arrow, a relic from his ancestors, Bard takes a stand against Smaug, who had terrorized his people for generations. Bard's successful shot is not only a moment of personal triumph, but also a victory for his entire community, liberating them from the fear that had oppressed them. His act of courage shows how ordinary individuals can make a profound impact, and that even the most destructive forces can be defeated by those who refuse to submit to fear. These acts of resistance are a recurring theme in Tolkien's works, where hope often emerges from the most unlikely places and individuals. By standing against dragons, the heroes of Middle-earth defy the darkness that seeks to consume them. This defiance reflects Tolkien's belief in the importance of resilience and courage, even when faced with seemingly insurmountable odds. Through their resistance, the free peoples of Middle-earth demonstrate that evil, no matter how powerful, can be challenged by those with enough resolve. The stories of resistance also emphasize the interconnectedness of Middle-earth's communities. The elves, dwarves, and men often fought together to overcome the dragon threat, forming alliances that would later play a crucial role in the fight against Sauron. These alliances were forged through shared hardship and a common goal, proving that unity is one of the most powerful weapons against evil. In this sense, the resistance against dragons is a precursor to the larger alliances seen in the War of the Ring, showing how the trials of the past shaped Middle-earth's future. The symbolic significance of dragons. In Tolkien's mythology, dragons are not merely antagonistic creatures, but deeply symbolic figures that represent various facets of evil and corruption. Their desire for wealth, their destructive power, and their capacity for manipulation make them complex symbols of the darker aspects of desire and ambition. Dragons in Middle-earth are embodiments of sin and vice, illustrating how unchecked desires can lead to ruin, not only for individuals but for entire civilizations. The dragon's greed serves as a warning about the dangers of avarice and materialism. Smaug, for instance, is driven not by hunger or need, but by an insatiable lust for gold. His hoarding of treasure, coupled with his refusal to share it, leads to the impoverishment of the surrounding region. Smaug's wealth becomes a curse, both for himself and for those around him. By creating dragons who hoard wealth yet derive no joy from it, Tolkien underscores the futility of greed, showing how it leads only to isolation and destruction. Dragons also symbolize the corrupting influence of power and ambition. Morgoth's creation of dragons was an extension of his desire to control and dominate Middle-earth. By unleashing dragons upon his enemies, Morgoth spread terror and despair, seeking to crush any opposition to his rule. In this sense, dragons are extensions of Morgoth's will, physical manifestations of his ambition and hatred. They represent the dark allure of power and the lengths to which some will go to achieve it, even at the cost of others' lives. Furthermore, dragons in Tolkien's world can be seen as representations of the darker aspects of mortality. Like humans, dragons are not immortal and will eventually die. Yet they are driven by a relentless desire to leave a lasting mark on the world. Their greed and pride often lead to their downfall, mirroring the tragic flaws that bring about the downfall of many human characters in Tolkien's stories. In this way, dragons serve as mirrors for humanity's own failings, highlighting the dangers of excessive pride, greed, and the desire for dominance. Finally, dragons symbolize the ongoing struggle between good and evil in Middle-earth. They are remnants of Morgoth's ancient malice, enduring symbols of his desire to corrupt and destroy. Even after Morgoth's defeat, the dragons remain as echoes of his influence, a reminder that evil cannot be fully eradicated, but must be constantly resisted. Their presence in Middle-earth serves as a warning to future generations, reminding them of the importance of vigilance and the need to stand against darkness in all its forms. In sum, the symbolic significance of dragons in Tolkien's work extends far beyond their physical power. They represent the darker aspects of desire, the dangers of unchecked ambition, and the enduring nature of evil. Through the dragons, Tolkien explores complex themes of corruption, greed, and resistance, using these creatures to reflect on the human condition and the ongoing struggle between light and darkness. The dragons of Middle-earth are not merely monsters to be defeated, but symbols of the moral and existential challenges that define Tolkien's world. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.